Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Real Time Talk. This is Quentin Anderson with Eagle 3D Streaming. Today's guest is Samuel Higgwe. He is a freelance 3D visualization artist. The name of his company is called Letsdesign Studios. That's the brand, not the company. And a little bit about Samuel is he mostly identifies as an artist, not necessarily an architecture designer, with a passion for design and visualization. Samuel's journey began with a Bachelor of Science in Architecture from Ghana, followed by a master's degree in architecture from San Francisco. Over the past 12 years, he's immersed himself in the world of architectural visualization, working both as a freelancer and in various full-time roles within the industry. Samuel, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having me here. It's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I'm super curious. I introduced you a little bit, but it'd be cool to kind of hear a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great platform you have in here. I think you really summarized it pretty well. I it all started like very young age, sometime high school. I was always like inspired by like 3D art and stuff back in Nigeria. And considering I was pretty young, I had limited options of programs to use. So I started using like free software like SketchUp back then and Home Architect. And then I had a family friend who was like an animator back then, and that's how I got into the 3D arts industry. So he was using 3ds Max back then. I was obviously like too young to grasp it, but as I grew older, I got back to it and started learning, started practicing 3ds Max, and then I started using V-Ray. That evolved to what we have now with Unreal Engine, so several other programs. Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned you're sort of an artist first and perhaps an architect second. Can you kind of give us a little more? How did you go about your artist career? I know you picked up a couple of softwares. Were you attending any, or how did you learn how to be an artist?
I went to the YouTube Academy of Arts, basically.
Cool.
So I didn't go to I didn't study 3D arts in any institution. It's all YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, but I did, I mean, my background in architecture, I was still around the four walls of a university studying architecture as a whole. But in terms of like visual arts and stuff, that was all self-taught
Cool.
using YouTube.
And then where did your interest come from architecture? Is that something that you've always kind of had an interest in, or did that also develop a little bit over time, or?
That was more like a career backup choice, you know.
Okay.
Growing up in Nigeria with parents, you have you don't have many options. It's like career. It's not like my family didn't support me, but
Hmm.
you needed to pick a right career. You can't just be whatever because you have like responsibilities and so architecture was one of those things that was I felt like was closest to what I wanted to do, just in case the visual arts didn't work out. But then I started to love it a lot and started realizing like it's really very close, very similar to what I wanted. So, but still, I still wanted to specialize in 3D arts. So I still found a way around it. With my architecture background, I'm still focused on architectural visualization.
Hmm. So architecture was kind of the plan B, but then you also found a way to marry your love of art with architecture through the visualization work that you're doing.
Exactly. Yes.
So I know that you started in SketchUp, and then what happened from there? Did you go to Max, or are you a 3ds Max guy, or
Uh,
what was your step after SketchUp?
I think I was kind of like delving in and coming out slowly. I didn't really like fully jump off the ship
Mm,
from SketchUp. I think it was always on my mind. I kept going to 3ds Max. Maybe if I have like extra time, I try to recreate what I did in SketchUp in 3ds Max. And the more I did that, the more I learned over time. And whenever I struggle, I know the software to go back to SketchUp. to go back to schedule.
Yeah.
But then as I started I also used V-Ray in both platforms back
Hmm.
then. So um, it was kind of like a slow transition. And then whenever I felt more comfortable, the more I felt comfortable, the more I used it. And that's how, even with other programs like Unreal Engine, um, that's basically how I went around it. From V-Ray, I tried out Lumion, tried out several other programs. But then when I tried out twinmotion in particular, that's actually made a shift in my mind because of the ease of compatibility with DataSmith.
Hmm.
So that's really changed everything because I could, although Unreal was a little complicated, I
Hmm.
could do whatever I want in twinmotion and then export and then carry on from there. Also understanding that architecture is not a linear design process, it's more iterative. I
Hmm.
wanted to use a program that I could quickly make changes regardless. And if I wanted to go for the high end stuff, I could if needed as well. So eventually I realized there's a workflow right here. So it's either 3ds Max, maybe V-Ray, maybe if I have like extra time. But then I go through Twinmotion, then Unreal, back and forth. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so and I'd like to understand that workflow a little bit better. So maybe you're starting in 3ds Max, and then you'll export that as a datasmith file and import that into Twinmotion.
So there are a couple ways to do it. You could actually, because DataSmith understands V-Ray materials, understands V-Ray lights as well.
Hmm.
So you could actually have a V-Ray scene exported as DataSmith to
Mm,
Twinmotion, and Twinmotion understands it. It sounds crazy, but it just does.
that's so cool. Yeah.
And you export it as DataSmith. All the V-Ray materials convert to whatever Twinmotion understands,
Hmm.
and you can export the same scene, whether from V-Ray or from Twinmotion to Unreal, and it's just like that. I mean, not as simple as a snap of a finger, but it's a lot better than we having to recreate V-Ray materials and textures and lights and all that from scratch. Definitely, it's a game changer.
So, and if you went directly from 3ds Max to Unreal, would Datasmith be able to convert the V-Ray materials for Unreal, or do you have to go through Twinmotion?
You mean from V-Ray 3ds Max to Unreal? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you can go directly from 3ds Max V-Ray without even going through Twinmotion. You can go directly to Unreal.
Nice. So
Yeah.
how do you decide when to use Twinmotion and when to use Unreal in your projects? Like, what are some of the
Uh,
reasons you would use one or the other?
I think one major thing is deadline.
Hmm.
That's one, and then the second thing is what you're trying to the project side. By project type, I mean what are you trying to do here? Is it like a design tool or is it like a marketing tool? Because if it's
Hmm.
a design tool, you don't need the best and high end graphics to design with. You just want a proof of concept. Fine. There's no reason to use Unreal,
Hmm.
no reason whatsoever, or V-Ray whatsoever. You can just use like the simplest visualization tool that requires the least effort possible. Like you can use Twinmotion, Lumion, whichever program that's the easiest for you, that's your fastest with. That's the tool I would. As a 3D artist, I'm a huge fan of learning as many programs as possible,
Hmm.
rather than being like a fanboy and sticking to one. It doesn't really help anyone being a fanboy and sticking to one. The Lumion world, V-Ray world, it's not necessary. All programs are useful regardless of what you like. I mean, what you enjoy using. If you see like a program that's best for a job, just use that program. And
Cool.
yeah, it's always better to be flexible with software.
Yeah. So
That's how I go about things.
mm. Yeah, so you kind of have like a toolbox and you pick the right tool for the project instead of using, a hammer and everything's a nail.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've got a wide array of options for you.
Exactly.
What was your experience like getting up to speed in Unreal? Because I know that, it's probably one of the more challenging programs to learn. It was for me. Or what was your experience learning
Uh,
Unreal Engine?
it was. painful to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. It is.
I think I've never. I think the only program that was just as painful was V-Ray,
Mm,
but that was my first real like rendering engine. So I can't really compare. With all my experience, I think Unreal is very painful to use.
yeah,
I'm not saying it's the most painful. It's just as painful as Unity and any game engine whatsoever. But Unreal is going to test you. It's really
hmm
going to test you. Unity is more like you don't have that pressure to have that great visuals.
right.
Just the fact that you're able to run Unity, everyone is impressed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Unity doesn't give you that pressure. Unreal, though, however, when you see what people have done with it, it kind of gives you that pressure. You kind of feel like a loser when your project looks like.
I know. I know. When it turns out and it's like, oh, it's not photoreal, it's supposed to look realistic.
Yeah, because like with Unity, no one cares. Like they just appreciate that you're using it. Like the community itself is different, and
Yeah,
the expectations of the pro. Although I think both programs can achieve similar levels of photorealism, but
for sure.
there's that unreal expectation. Like if you tell people you're using Unreal, there's that expectation of what they want to see. And if you don't get to that point, you probably kind of look like a loser, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'll say Unreal can be painful because of the expectations available. But I do think that it's a much easier program to grasp than Unity, in my
hmm
opinion, because of the data smith workflow. If
Mm,
you're struggling to learn Unreal. I'll say start with twinmotion and then slowly figure it out. There's a lot of tutorials out there, but trust me, there are too many ways to do one thing that you might get overwhelmed to actually get it done, just because there's just too many ways to get it done. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good, and that's a really good point. Is Twinmotion is definitely a good way to ease into the Epic Games universe,
yeah,
and get familiar with Datasmith, visualize a few projects in Twinmotion, and then kind of graduate to Unreal Engine.
yeah.
And it's really exciting that you've kind of already had this journey as an artist using all these software programs. Are there any projects that you may like to kind of talk or showcase that you've developed to kind of demonstrate some of the cool things that you're working on?
Yeah, yeah. I do have some passion projects. Most of them are like projects I did and then stopped working on, but they're still interesting regardless. There's one project that was like a metaverse inspired project where the
Hmm.
metaverse was thin, big
hmm
then. Back
hmm
then.
Yeah.
That was on the Decentraland platform. It was running a little bit on JavaScript, but then
Cool.
there was another really passionate project I had, which was a virtual museum.
Hmm.
That was more like the idea was it's gonna be like a metaverse-ish thing, like a mini metaverse where players can come in and showcase digital arts, whether it's AI generated um, or human made, and they have like these canvases. The idea was having these canvases where they can book in advance and then have their art displayed for a certain amount of time where players could just come in and have a look at it. Maybe like a maybe the idea was maybe it could work like a social platform where people
Cool.
can comment on your art and maybe get tagged, follow your Instagram from there.
Cool.
But then I had there was some decision making in terms of like how do I launch this or demo this. So I tried different ways, and the cloud was one of the things that I thought could work, and that's how I came across the Eagle platform, audio streaming platform. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were kind of talking before this call, just sort of how we run into it. It seems like cloud never is usually something we have in mind initially. It's usually when we get to the point where it's like, oh crap, how am I going to share this, this awesome thing that I built? What are my options? That's when like, or was it your experience where you got to the point where you'd made something amazing, and then the question was, how am I going to share it, or how did you kind of figure out about like the cloud and pixel streaming?
So it goes way back. Even before this, I think the main thing that got me interested in figuring out how to share on the cloud was when I was working at the firm, and then we created this immersive experience that we wanted to present to a client. It wasn't my client, it was our client. And then we encountered an issue where the file was like 5 gig, which is not a large file for Unreal. If
Yeah.
people, if you used Unreal, 4 gig is like basic.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It could get worse. It could be
Oh yeah.
50 gig. It could
Yeah.
get worse.
Yeah.
And then you have these clients who can barely install a program on their PC, and you're expecting them to be able to run a program that might have some prerequisite applications like NVIDIA graphics card,
Hmm.
device manager, or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's just no. That's one easy way to lose a client.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we started thinking about like ways that we can share like seamlessly. Like it could just be a link where they can just go. And then I started going into like virtual tour sites. I know the popular one is like Matterports, where you can just send a link
Hmm.
and you can have a 360 panoramas. But that's limited to 360 panoramas. What if you want like a fully interactive application? Then what do you do? Do you create your own server?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so that's that. We know that's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
so I mean, that's where Pixel Streaming and Eagle platforms like Eagle Streaming comes in place, come into play. Makes it a lot easier. Yeah. And that's you guys have like a branding uh, feature too, where you can, if you don't want to show Eagle, you can show whatever um, company logo you want to have, right? So
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can kind of show, if it's your brand or if it's your customer's brand, you can just showcase that, and so it's a little bit more of like a customized or curated experience.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and I don't know if you have anything available, but if you do, if you want to share, maybe screen share a project, please feel free to.
Sure.
Or okay, cool.
So, so what right now what we're looking at is like a gameplay of the first metaverse test project
Hmm.
that was launched on Decentraland. For this one, it was more like it's called like Project Voronoi. It was like a virtual space where players. I mean, this is nothing like what the concept art was. I'll show the concept art much later, but
Okay.
the idea was like I was just trying to test having to launch projects on a metaverse platform like Decentraland. And then the second one is so this is my website. It was like the VR museum that I spoke about earlier. And here you see that, give it a second, it's going to load. Maybe I'll skip the video a bit. Yeah. So here, this is the virtual museum where you have like canvases that players could upload like their latest design and then share it with friends, and then they can comment of it. Obviously, this one's are the tests, so these are AI generated art pieces that I uploaded on the site. But here you have like photorealistic, able to launch, able to run on, I think it's 60 frames. So that's where optimization comes in too as well. It's not just the platform that makes it work, but you have to also optimize it. And the more you get familiar with the platform, the more you can. So yeah, I mean, this is like a game changer. I think I'm looking forward to like experimenting more ways of even making it more immersive, like me probably with multiplayer ex functions and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. So, and to kind of talk about the multiplayer idea, how would that play out for something that you've worked on? Would you have it to where two people are in the your virtual machine or in the virtual museum at the same time, and they're able to sort of have a shared experience? Like I can walk, you and I are walking together through the experience. We're looking at specific art pieces, or what do you think that, or what would multiplayer be for your experience?
Yeah, it's very, very similar to what you just said. I felt the idea was to make it actually a multiplayer where players can have avatars or whatever.
Hmm.
But as besides that, there were some um, gameplay choices. I'll say I chose to make it first person because I wanted it to be more immersive with the art piece.
Mm.
So the idea is like you can have like maybe up to 5 players in museum, but then even going further, you could have like different um, exhibitions at different locations. Maybe it could even expand where you can move from one museum to another museum,
Oh,
and
cool. Oh, cool.
it could become like a huge post, like maybe even a city of museums. So
Yeah. And is it to where anyone can kind of build a museum in your city? That
um, that would be a good idea. Being able to like customize like what the art gallery looks like, because art it's not just about the canvas; it's a whole experience, right? So maybe you want like a spaceship experience where the art is hologram, or maybe the art is not just on the canvas; it could be a hologram. It could be um, it could be 3D art. Like it's probably it could be an art piece that's interactive. So that's where gameplay comes in.
Mhm.
So art is art. It's not
Yeah.
stock. It's not. It doesn't have to be on a white canvas. It could be an experience. That's art. Film is art. Everything. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you ever consider maybe doing something like NFTs or something where someone could showcase their art and it could be purchased through the platform, or is that not the point of this? It's more about the art for the art's sake.
Uh, yeah, I mean this was done at that time when NFT was a thing, big thing.
Hmm.
The idea was maybe we can take advantage of that, but it's not really about NFTs per se.
Okay.
I'll say if if the opportunity comes, yeah, it could be implemented, but that's not the major focus. The major focus is celebrating art, and if it's able to generate income, that's fine. I don't want to be um, I mean, there's so many things that come into play. Security comes into play when there's money involved and stuff.
Right.
But just to keep things simple, it's all about celebrating art. If you want, you can have like a link to your um, Instagram or whatever within the platform whatsoever. That you handle that.
Got it.
Sell the money making part. You handle that.
Right.
I think the whole point of this is just being able to share experiences, art, and
Cool. Yeah, and it makes it more pure too, right?
yeah,
Because then it's just like you said, it's about celebrating art, and that's the point. And
yeah,
so, and I see you, sharing your museum right now on the screen. Is this a live stream? Or are you able to like walk around and kind of okay? So you can
yeah.
like move around and you can check out pieces at your leisure, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you have like an avatar, he has arms and stuff. If there were two people, you'd be able to see like the player, but since it's just me and there isn't really reflection.
I was about to say maybe there's a mirror. Yeah.
No, there isn't a mirror.
Yeah.
I wish so some things like you would notice there's no ray tracing obviously because it's a huge performance impact.
Hmm.
Um if you notice all the shadows are baked in, so there are some ways to go around it. This is all baked in lighting, so
Right.
just to add that layer of photorealism, so it's not dynamic lighting, which is not necessary. So
Cool. Yeah, and that's kind of an important point to bring up is so you decided to do baked lighting for this project, and for those who may not be familiar with baked lighting, can you kind of explain the difference between baked and dynamic lighting, and why you decided to do baked in this project?
so baked lighting, it's basically you have the lighting embedded in the textures. So let's say you have this wood texture, right? Ideally, the sun should, if I move this, which I can't move anyway, but if I move this planter, the shadow will still be in place,
Hmm.
if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
And also the shadows that's being cast on the planter is going to be in place while you're moving it. So it's not dynamic. If it was dynamic lighting, the shadows are going to move like it should in real life. However, that's has an impact on the performance. It requires more performance, not necessarily because the light is moving, but mostly because of the graphics fidelity required to have it to look this way. If you want it to have dynamic lighting, you have to tone down the graphics fidelity to what you have, similar to what you have in like the Decentraland, which and like games like Minecraft. Those games don't require, they don't have high graphics fidelity,
Right.
so you can have like dynamic lighting, but it's still like this because it's the focus is photorealism for this project specifically. Big lighting was the way to go.
Cool. And I know you shared two projects, one in Decentraland and then one being the museum. Why did you decide to use Decentraland for one project and then Unreal for another? Was it because of the realism, or what were some of the reasons behind those?
So yeah, I'll say it's not really about that. It's just it was just for the central and particular, the reason why I was trying to go into that was there was a huge community in the central at that time. So that was more like the reason for trying out the central lines, mainly because of the community, not really about the style whatsoever. I would say the central land is a little limiting because it only supports a certain art style.
Right.
Whereas if I was to launch it on my own streaming platform using your platform, I can have the experience look the way I want, whichever visual style I want. And I can have my own rules of gravity or whatsoever if I want. So it's all down to what I want, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Decentraland kind of has a larger user base, but there's more limitations. But with Unreal, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah. So let me let me just take us around like the ideas I had for the Central Land project. So you see here there's some iterations of like the idea was the players will have like different. This is a Mobius loop basically, but the players have different um, how would I say scenarios of that Mobius loop, so that it could change over time. So each time they visit the space, it's quite different. Um, and then the idea was like people will be able to like play games to earn coins or whatever NFTs. That was the idea. But like I said, if this was made with Unreal, I could have brought all these ideas to life. But because Decentraland is quite limiting, from the video you saw, you can only like there's gravity. You can't change that, right? Well, if you were making this with a real game engine like Unreal, you could actually have all this game mechanics running real time
Right.
without limitations. It's all based on your skill set. So I think that's where your streaming platform comes in, because it allows artists to create whatsoever they want,
Awesome.
basically.
Awesome. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
guess the reason for using Eagle or the pixel streaming is kind of the flexibility it provides artists to
yeah,
basically at that point it's just your imagination, which is,
yeah,
whatever you can imagine can be created.
yeah, yeah. Basically, the only reason this is in launch is because I don't know how to program very well.
Mm.
So if there's anyone in the group that wants to volunteer, I'll be happy to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and this is how we make connections, in the community.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so and I know we're kind of wrapping up on time. I may switch back over to our camera view. You'll have to stop sharing your screen if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, yeah, there we go. Uh, yeah, so and thank you again, Samuel, for being on. It was a pleasure getting to walk through your projects and learn a little bit more about kind of what led you to where you are today. For anyone interested in connecting, is there a best way to reach out to you?
Um, I I'm very responsive on Instagram, so I can drop my Instagram handle. It's @_Hicksman, ARC_HIGSMAN.
Okay.
Is this something I can drop on the chat or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. So if you drop it on the chat, and then we can share it in the YouTube feed
Okay,
as well.
yeah.
Um,
And then for my brand, it's Let's.Design.Studios. So
Cool.
whichever way you want to reach out to me. If you want to know me personally, that's my personal Instagram at Kingsman. If you want to be more professional, you can do Let's Design, whichever way, it's fine.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll share these in the YouTube video in case anyone would like to connect with you. Samuel, again, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank
thank
you.
you everyone for tuning in for today's show. I'm Quentin Anderson. This has been Real Time Talk with Eagle 3D Streaming, and we will catch you on the next show.